Hello, I am back today to show you guys how to do something pretty fun and delicious. We are going to be baking some very simple vanilla cupcakes today. Vanilla cake, vanilla buttercream, and some fresh strawberries on top. It's a really simple recipe, really doesn't take that long. It's, you know, for all skill levels, you can try this. It's super simple. So the oven is preheating. I've got everything ready to go. I think we should get started. Alright, so the oven is preheated at 350 degrees. That's where you're going to want it for this recipe. That's kind of where you want it for most cupcakes. But yep, for this one, for vanilla cupcakes, 350 degrees. And we are going to start off by whisking our dry ingredients together. So, in this little bowl, I have 1 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. You could probably also use like pastry flour or whole wheat flour, but all-purpose flour is what this recipe calls for. And so we're just going to whisk in the other dry ingredients, which for this recipe is going to be 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So we're just going to pour that right in, and then we are going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which I have right here. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. I use kind of a small bowl, so I'm going to have to whisk this kind of carefully. But you kind of want to just get everything, you know, incorporated in there, kind of evenly mixed. Yeah, this would have been easier with a bigger bowl. That's okay. And because I didn't sift my flour, the whisk kind of helps to loosen up any clumps like that. So this is kind of also in lieu of sifting the flour. And it's also going to get more mixed up when we put it in our mixer. But for now, this is perfect. So everything's pretty much mixed in there now, the salt and the baking powder and the flour. We can actually put that aside for right now. And for this recipe, for vanilla cupcakes, I'm going to use a stand mixer. I have this great stand mixer. My aunt got me as a gift, so shout out to my Aunt Susan. It's awesome. So it makes some really good cupcakes. So what I'm going to do to get started here is to to beat my butter and my sugar until it's light and fluffy. Usually when you're beating flour and sugar, you want to use this paddle attachment, but I found for this mixer, for creaming butter and sugar, this whisk attachment actually works better, so I'm going to use that, but you could also just use a paddle attachment if you have that. So I'm going to start off with a 1/2 cup of butter, which is actually just a stick of butter. It's unsalted butter, and it's softened, so it'll mix really easily. So you can always put it in the microwave for a couple seconds or just let it sit out for like an hour, which is what I did. So we've got our stick of unsalted butter, and then we are going to do our cup of white granulated sugar. I'm just going to pour that right in there. Pop this thing up, make sure everything's locked in, we're good, and we're just going to let this go until it's nice and light and fluffy. I might take my spatula at a couple points and kind of separate stuff to make sure it's all mixed together, but we're just going to let it go till it's nice and light. Alright, so you guys can see, it looks like the butter and the sugar are all evenly incorporated now. It's a nice light color, which is good. I'm going to pop that down. I'm actually going to, for this next step of incorporating the eggs, I'm going to change from this attachment to this paddle attachment right here, because we can use this paddle from this point on. I'm just going to give this one more little mix. Just going to use my spatula to kind of get anything that's stuck to the bottom during that, but yeah, the butter and the sugar are definitely all together now. So now, one at a time, we are going to crack our eggs, 2 eggs total, into this. So we're going to do 1, and then we're going to mix it for a minute and kind of get that all incorporated in there. That looks good, nice light fluffy and yellow. So now I'm going to take my other egg, do the same thing, crack it right in there. Make sure I didn't get any shell. Looks like we're good. Alright, and we're going to do this one for about a minute too. And actually before I start this, I'm just going to kind of scrape the sides real quick to make sure everything's free flowing in there. There we go. Alright, so the egg and the sugar and the butter are all beaten together. Kind of a nice light consistency. For the next step, we are going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Usually when it comes to vanilla, I just do, if it calls for a teaspoon, I just do like a capful. It's close enough. So I'm going to do 2 capfuls of vanilla. There's 1, and there's 2. And again, now we're going to beat this in for about 30 seconds. Vanilla is in there, mixed in there evenly. Again, I just tend to scrape the sides in this between every step just to make sure everything's getting evenly mixed in there. Next, for our last wet ingredient, we are going to add actually sour cream. So I've got a 1/2 cup of sour cream right here, and I'm just going to plop this right in. And this helps keep the cupcakes moist. It makes them nice and light and fluffy. It always works out well for vanilla cupcakes when you have sour cream in the ingredients. Alright, so there's our 1/2 cup of plain sour cream. I'm going to mix that in now for about 30 seconds. Okay, that looks good. It looks like a pretty smooth consistency of a mixture. Again, I'm kind of just scraping the sides there. So for our last step, now we're just going to add in the dry ingredients that we kind of mixed together in the beginning. So we've got our flour, our salt, and baking powder all mixed in this bowl, and I'm just going to slowly add them into this mixture while it's going. You don't want to dump the whole thing, and it's better just to kind of add it in little bits, let it get smooth, add a little bit more. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start this. At this point, I'm just going to stop it and again scrape the sides for all those, get all those dry ingredients in that stuck to the sides, because you don't want to leave out any potential baking powder or anything that's going to help it rise. So just give it a little scrape, turn it back on. I'm going to add some more. And you can see it's definitely starting to thicken, so I'm going to give this another scrape here, get in those little dry bits, and then I'm going to add the remaining bit of dry ingredients. I'm going to dump it right in. And with vanilla cake, it's one of those recipes that you don't want to overmix, so you don't want to just leave this going for like 5 minutes and walk away. If you overbeat it, it can kind of cause it not to rise as much when you bake it. So I'm giving this one more scrape. I'm just going to kind of get every last bit in there and then make sure it's nice and smooth, and then I will be ready to scoop it into my cupcake liners. So one more. And I would say that looks good. So I'm going to come over here now. We're just going to make sure we get all of our batter off of our paddle. That's going in the sink. And I'm going to take this bit that I put on the edge and just kind of plop it in there. And I'm going to kind of just make sure this is all together. And that looks good. It's a very nice light mixture. It's all very smooth. There's no big lumps in there. So I'd say at this stage now we are ready to scoop it into our cupcake liners. This recipe is supposed to make 14 regular size cupcakes, but I'm using kind of in between regular size and mini cupcakes. So I just filled up 2. I have 24 like kind of in between size cupcakes. We're gonna see if this is enough batter. We'll see how many we get. But I like this size, you know, this size little liner. It's like the perfect bite size cupcake. I'm just using a little cookie scoop, like a little dough scoop to do this. It just helps kind of ensure that each one will be the same size. You can always just use a spoon or eyeball it, but I like doing this. It just makes it more even and uniform. So now I'm just gonna scoop all these in. I think about 1 scoop for this size works. Yeah. Alright, that actually measured out pretty well. I've got a little bit of extra batter here, so I'm actually just going to see if any of these look a little low and just kind of top them up just a little. Usually with cupcakes, whatever size liner you're using, you want to usually fill them about 3/4 of the way. We'll add a little bit more to that one. little bit more to that one. I really try not to waste any, so if any of them look a little low, I just top them off. I just do a little bit more. Maybe, okay. I think that's good. I'm going to give these, just to kind of, you know, make them a little bit more smooth on the top, I'm going to give them just a little bit of a tap like that. Alright, and I think we're good to go. So like I said, the oven's at 350. These are going to go in, the recipe says 18 to 22 minutes. We'll probably check them at 18 minutes and see where we're at. Where we're at. Alright, I'm going to pop them in. That's our timer and oven mitts. Whoops. There they are. Perfect. Yeah, that one scoop with the cookie scoop was like the perfect amount. Alright, so we're going to take these out. Oh yeah, they feel nice and springy. Very good. I'm going to turn this off. We are going to let these cool. And in the meantime, I'm going to make some vanilla buttercream. Alright, so I've got everything out, ready to make some vanilla buttercream frosting. It's just a very nice, simple, light frosting. It is pretty simple ingredients. It calls for, well, normally it calls for 3 sticks of butter. I'm making a little bit less since I made smaller cupcakes. So for the amount I made, I'm going to use 2 sticks of unsalted butter, softened. Again, you want them nice and soft, like, you can kind of squeeze them like that. And we're going to start off by just plopping those in, and we're going to beat them on high and get them nice and smooth, and get a nice smooth and creamy consistency. We're probably going to do that for about 4 or 5 minutes. And again, you can use that paddle attachment, but for beating the butter, like I said earlier, I found that this attachment works pretty well too. Okay, so we're just going to let this go for a few minutes. Okay, so it looks like we're at a good spot here. The butter is nice and fluffy. If you look closely, you can see it's actually lighter in color, which is a good sign. When you beat butter a lot and it kind of gets that light, fluffy, like air incorporated in it, it gets lighter in color, so that's when you know it's kind of ready. So the next step is to add our powdered sugar. So if you're keeping track, it was 2 sticks of butter. That's a cup of butter, and I'm going to add in total about a pound of powdered sugar for this. And again, I'm just going to kind of do it a little bit at a time, kind of get it in there till it's nice and smooth. So we're just going to start out. Alright, so we've got everything pretty much mixed together, and this whisk attachment did its job to break up the butter for me. But now, because there's so much in here, and there's a lot of resistance, I'm going to switch out this paddle attachment, which is a bit stronger, and this is really going to help beat the butter and sugar together and make it nice and light and airy. And also, because this is at a dense point, I'm going to add a little bit of milk to kind of thin it out, and kind of like magic, it'll get nice and light and fluffy and it'll become buttercream. So I'm just going to switch that on. I'm going to add about a tablespoon or 2 of milk for right now. Maybe a little more. And actually, while I'm at the stage while the mixer's off, I might as well add my vanilla. So I'm going to add about 1.5 capfuls of vanilla also. And, because why not, we're just going to add a little pinch of salt to kind of bring out the vanilla. Okay, so paddle attachment is locked in. We're going to let this go for a few more minutes until it gets nice and light and fluffy. So, as you can see, this kind of did its thing and got nice and light and fluffy and is now nice, light vanilla buttercream. So what I'm going to do is load up a piping bag and wait for the cupcakes to cool a little bit more, and then I will show you how I'm going to decorate the top of it with the buttercream and some fresh strawberries. Alright, so one of the things I wanted to do on the cupcakes was put some fresh strawberries in kind of like a ring of the buttercream we just made. So I'm just going to finely chop up enough strawberries to top each cupcake with, and then I think I'm going to add a little bit of sugar, kind of mix it in there just to add a tiny bit of sweetness. I might also add a little squirt of lemon too, just to kind of like brighten the flavors a little bit, but we'll see. I'll have to taste it after I add the sugar and see where we're at. But for right now, I'm just going to chop these pretty finely. Right, so we've got our strawberry mixture done. The buttercream is done. So basically what I'm going to do is put a little thin layer of the buttercream on top of each cupcake, and then I'm going to do a ring of buttercream, and then I'm going to fill it with strawberries. So this is kind of just like a little protector on the surface of each cupcake so it doesn't get too soggy. So I'm just going to do this. This won't take long. So I've got my piping bag full of the buttercream, strawberries with a little lemon squeeze in there, ready to go, a little bit of sugar. So what I'm going to do is I put on a little barrier layer of the buttercream, and I'm just going to start piping kind of rings around the top of these, and then eventually the next step will be to put the strawberry kind of right in the middle there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. The buttercream rings are piped on there, and now I'm just going to take little spoonfuls of the fresh strawberry, just kind of put it in the center. Like so. Alright, well those are our finished vanilla strawberry cupcakes. Great for spring, nice fresh bright flavors, especially with that little bit of lemon kind of mixed in there with the strawberry. It gave it a nice fresh flavor, perfect for spring. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I plan to make more, so stay tuned, but I hope you guys enjoy your weekend, and I will see you soon.